Okay, so yeah, no, thanks for the invite for this. So yes, as Sarah said, I wear a couple of hats, and I'll talk about those today. But I'm essentially, been involved with natural history filming and shark research now for over 30 years. So I'll take you on a bit of a journey on that story in this presentation. So at the moment, I'm running the BIOPIXEL group. So there's two entities. There's BIOPIXEL, which is the natural history production company, and then we have the BIOPIXEL Oceans Foundation, which is our scientific arm, and that's led up by Dr. Adam Barnett. And I've been working with Adam for 20-something years now, and it's been a bit of an evolution in shark research in that period, and we're doing quite a lot at the moment. We have number of people finishing up their PhDs, including Ingo Miller, which is doing some amazing stuff on the whale sharks, which I'll show you during this presentation as well. So yeah, so basically, let's go on my little journey. I actually grew up in the southern end of the Great Barrier Reef in Rockhampton. So I used to punch out to, we used to go to the Keppels every couple of weekends with my mates. And every year we'd go out to Northwest Island for a 2-week camping trip. We were very heavily interested in marine aquariums. So from the age of 10, we all had saltwater tanks. And part of the deal with our parents was for every animal we caught, we had to learn its scientific name and as much about it as possible. So, in year 7, I famously took an epaulet shark to school. Mum had to drive in with the saltwater esky and an air stone in it. And I gave my shark talk with a live epaulet shark and then had to take it home, put it back in the tank. So the people in this photo, that's me in the middle. The guy sitting down is Professor Dougal Lindsay. He's probably one of the preeminent deep water biologists in the world. So he's based at Jamstec as one of their senior biologists. So he has literally discovered hundreds of deep sea species. The one in the green t-shirt is Jeremy, that's Dougal's brother. But the other guy is Bevan Slattery, who's our owner for the whole BIOPIXEL group. So he's a massive IT entrepreneur, and ironically has made most of his income from putting submarine cables across the Indian and Pacific Oceans to have Australia join broadband internet. So we all still work together, and we all have a massive passion on the Barrier Reef. So having had marine aquariums as a kid growing up, naturally I went to JCU to do marine biology. I was lucky enough to actually start work at the Great Barrier Reef Aquarium before I started my undergrad. So I worked there pretty well full-time whilst doing my degree the whole way through. And then after that, I went down as the biologist to Manly Aquarium, and also went to design the aquarium in Maui, Hawaii. But, working in public aquariums gave me a real intimate insight into sharks and shark behaviour. I was lucky enough to have this, Bruce, a great white, in captivity for 5 days before we ended up having to release him because he just wouldn't settle down. But being in the aquarium world gave me a lot of real hands-on training in how to deal with sharks, which then I sort of applied those techniques to when I came back up to the Great Barrier Reef. But at the same time, I started developing a camera habit when I was down at Manly Aquarium, or actually even before the aquarium in Townsville, where I was making short videos, little educational videos to show animal behaviour. At that stage, video cameras were just started on the market. There was a lot of really nice still photos around, but I was really more interested in showing how fish laid eggs or spawned and all that kind of stuff and how they fed. So video was a great way to do that. And that's been the other part of my career. The big camera, me standing on the seafloor, that's the big 3D IMAX camera we did for the Great Barrier Reef series. I've shot over for about 150 documentaries now, was the last time we had a look. And we have a massive stock vision library that's been used in well over another 500 productions in the last 13 years or so. So we're pretty active in the natural history space. One of the things we are known for, and again, bringing back to my aquarium knowledge days, is a lot of advanced behavioural sequences we do in our studio, which is here at James Cook University in Cairns. So I'm at the Smithfield campus. And so we've got a studio space down there I share with Jamie Seymour with all his venom work. And this is our most complex rig we've built today. It's a bespoke robot camera system that enables us to fly cameras through sets. Those of you into movie making and science fiction, one of the big trends at the moment is to have projected backgrounds, so it looks more real. And so we actually go out and shoot background plates, play them back on TVs that are synced to the camera behind, and then having the camera in amongst the action. So this is some stuff we've been doing for the new Nemo series that's coming out with Disney at the end of the year. So it enables, like, that's the periscope camera right in the tank, where this is filming the clownfish laying eggs, but because the background's real and it moves with the camera, it all looks like it's out in the field. We still do a lot of stuff out in the field. What we generally do is shoot all the field work first and then come back in the studio for the super close-ups. And we use the field reference for things like the light dapple, amount of current, particles in the water and all that kind of stuff, so you can match it and make it look real. So never believe anything you see on TV. In fact, the first time we used this was for a James Cameron job where we shot the animals this way for him, and they actually thought we'd gone back out to sea to film it. And when you can fool James Cameron, that means you pretty well can fool anyone. We didn't actually tell them that those pickup shots were done in the tank. So that's the filming side that we do. And then obviously, we're here to learn about the shark research, what we've been up to. When I first came back up north after working in the aquarium space, I started work back at the Marine Park Authority, but at the same time I was doing research out in the Coral Sea on an ecotourism vessel back in the day called Undersea Explorer. And in those days, Osprey was it still is an amazing shark dive. There was a lot of boats going out there in those days, and there's only one or two going out there now. But, it's one of those places where you could jump in the water on the edge of the reef and without any food in the water have, 50, 60 grey reefs and white tips and silver tips swimming around you in like a big grey ballet. I really wanted to learn what the home range of these different species were and to tease out, if you had all these different species living in the same spot, how they separated out their different niches. And so this is when, the acoustic tracking was in its absolute infancy. And because there was a lot of people paying a lot of money to go see these sharks, we didn't want to hook them. And so because I'd come from the aquarium background, we were very hands-on. And so we'd put crates of food down, just fish frames inside a couple of milk crates tied together. And when the sharks would go in and try and get the food, then I'd come up behind them and slip the rope on the tail and just lasso them and swim them up to the surface where we could then do our work on them, the measuring and all that kind of stuff. This is, as I said, the infancy of the acoustic tracking days. So we would surgically implant a radio transmitter inside the shark, inside the body cavity, and they're like a thick marker pen in terms of size, and would go for many years. Today the big ones are going up for 10 years. In those days, they were running for about 5 or 6 years. And we could regularly go down and catch the same sharks year after year to look at growth rates and all those kind of things. So we got to know the individual sharks quite well. With the acoustic receiver transmitter inside the shark's body, you need a receiver device, and this is what the receiver looks like. It's just like a couple Coke cans on top of each other. And essentially when the shark swims past, it transmits an ultrasonic signal through the water every 60 to 90 seconds. It's a unique data code. So these devices then record the time and date when the shark was in that area. And the important thing about this kind of technology is that it really gives us an insight into the secret life of the sharks that is happening when we're not out there, what's happening at night, also in different parts of the reef where we don't visit regularly. We could put these data loggers out there and get this kind of information. This is what we did. We had a very intensive study out at Osprey Reef that was actually funded through Discovery Channel back in the day when they actually used to make good shark documentaries that were of and, you know, before they went into the celebrity things they do now. But if you look on the nautical map there, they're the locations of all these receivers around Osprey Reef during the study period. Now, that reef is massive. It's over 20 kilometres long. So these listening stations have about a half-kilometre listening range in the depths we're deploying them. And why this is important is that when we started this project is that the coral sea reefs were unprotected, and we really wanted to get a handle on which parts of the reef were the different species of sharks in fact using. And we ran a concurrent study along the ribbon reefs at the same time. The Marine Park Authority actually had an interest in what was happening with the megafauna in those days, and so we ran a whole line of these receivers from ribbon reef number 10 up to Hicks, Day and Carter, and on the outside and the inside, and we did a lot of shark catching and tagging there. We also tagged the potato cod at Cod Hole, because at that stage Gabroompa was interested to see what the home range was of those potato cod. And if you look at the data, basically the size of the circle here, the bigger the circle, the more time spent of that species in that area. And the different colours there are the different species. The orange is the great reef, blue is the silver tip, green the white tip, and yellow was the manta rays, which there was a large manta population back in those days before the first of the mega bleaching events occurred in the Coral Sea. So the size is the time of day that the percentage of time of day that they spent within those different zones. And if you look at it, the sharks predominantly use that northwest quadrant of Osprey Reef. Interestingly enough, the big yellow spot in the middle is the manta rays going into the lagoon at night time. It was the first time we'd sort of found that kind of behaviour. We have seen that in other places like Palmyra Atoll since then. But if you're looking at this as a model for what happens in coral sea reefs, that northwest quadrant kind of makes sense. You know, you've got your prevailing southeast winds, so that is the calmest area. And so therefore you get a lot of fish schooling up there, potential prey. And the other thing we see at Osprey is where right at the northern point and also that midpoint down on the west is cleaning stations. So the sharks going to those areas to be cleaned by the cleaner wrasses and lunar wrasses at certain times of day. And the rest of the reef was hardly used by these sharks. They occasionally go around, but it was that northwest quadrant that was of major importance. And where this became really important, this data set, was when the proposals came up for the Coral Sea to be declared a marine park, is that there was not a lot of biological data about what was happening in the Coral Sea on any species, to be quite honest. And in the negotiations with the feds, with the users, so the fishing groups and the tourism, there was, anytime you have a marine park to be declared, there's a lot of politics involved. And there was a lot of proposals put around, particularly the fishing groups wanted like a 1 kilometre exclusion around the whole reef where everything outside that could be green, but that 1 kilometre area. And this data set really showed that, you know, that the edges are very important, but the northwest quadrant is the most significant kind of habitat these animals were using. And at one stage, the fishing group said, oh, you can have everything else green. We just want that northwest quadrant. And like everything, marine parks, it's all compromise. And negotiations happened and all that kind of stuff. But we did end up finally, when Malcolm Turnbull was in to get a Coral Sea Marine Park declared. It's a multi-use marine park, but Osprey is all fully protected out there. But it was cool to have the data sets used all the way through the process as, you know, a model for, you know, how these coral sea reefs were in fact working. So it's cool to see our research end up being used in a big outcome such as that. Because we knew the sharks out there really well, we were able to use it as a test bed for a lot of different emerging technologies. And up near my hand where I'm grabbing the tail there is a mini data logger. It was one of the first to ever come out. They actually developed a salmon. And this is one of its first deployments on a shark, because we knew the sharks that well. We knew we could get these data loggers actually back from them. And so we're able to look at movement patterns of the different species and activity patterns. This one's probably one of the most interesting, is the white tip. And you can see at nighttime, which is the black bar, just erratic, you know, swimming behaviour. And then during the day, they'd spend most of the day just sitting on the seafloor without moving. So this We always knew white tips were more active, but this really gave us the quantitative data to categorically show that white tips were a nocturnally active shark. I mean, their dive profile looks like that done by an underwater camera person, really. The other interesting thing with this data set, if you look at the third day there, the white tips actually moving erratically during the middle of the day. And when we had a deep dive into these data sets, we found that that was when tourist boats had arrived, well, actually even before they arrived, to go dive these areas. And when we looked at it, the sharks would be active, start getting inactive about an hour before the dive boat would show up. And so they could hear the boat coming an hour away. You know, during this period, it was pretty well random what days the boats went there. But the white tips were changing their behaviour, knowing that a dive boat was coming up. We started looking at the energetics of this, and what we found is on the days that the diving were occurring, that the white tips were losing 6 to 8% of their energy because of this extra swimming that they had to do, which if you had dive boats out there 7 days a week, diving all the time would be a problem. But not so much now. You're lucky to have a boat out there once or twice a week. So, but it was interesting, and this is the first sort of study done on shark behaviour changing because of human activities. And since then, we've been invited to do work on the bull sharks in Fiji with the feeding activities over there, and it's been a pretty interesting journey to see what happens in terms of the shark tourism. The bull shark stuff in Fiji, we thought there'd be major effects on the sharks because of the amount of food going in the water. But when we looked at by taking tissue samples of the bull sharks as I went by and looking at the isotopes, because they're fed tuna, so it would have a very strong signature in the isotope data. It's like the tuna contributed to like 6 or 8% of their diet, and that's just of the individual sharks that would feed on the tuna, which is only a handful out of the whole population anyhow. So it is one of those things where if you are having shark tourism, it's just having that balance that it's not being detrimental to the animal. The other spot I've spent a lot of my life is in the far north, up at a place called Rain Island, which was the largest green sea turtle nesting site in the world. I've been going there for 30 years, and I've been there on a few occasions where we've had over 20,000 turtles nesting on the beach in an hour, because we actually have to go and count them. But since then, we have seen a big population drop with the turtle population up there as a result of climate change. Oh, let me just turn that sound down. That's what an average night used to look like. To be honest, average would be 5,000 to 6,000. 5, 6, 7,000 a night. The 20,000's only occurred on 3 times I've been up there, and only a handful of times beforehand. And at that level, there's actually no nesting taking place because the turtles are just colliding into each other. So I did a lot of natural history filming up there, but my main interest was, with these guys, the tiger sharks that were migrating to Rain. And I really wanted to know where the sharks were going after they left Rain, because you'd have this food pulse during the summer period. And most of that food pulse would actually be, back in the day, was dead turtles. If you've got a couple of thousand turtles up at night nesting, they're old, it's stressful. And to be honest, if the turtles aren't off the beach by about 8:30 in the morning, they will cook and die. They're just compromised by the heat. And so you'd get a couple dying in the tide zone each day. And as the tide would come up, tigers would migrate in, swim around. Tawny nurses would also be in there. And then they'd start grabbing the carcasses and feeding on them. And as the tide went up, the carcasses would drift off, and the sharks would make work of them. On some of the big ears, sometimes you could go around the reef flat and see just partially eaten turtles because there was just an overabundance of food. But we're talking a lot of tigers up there. This is just one frame from a video when I was doing 360 in the water, coming up on a rapid ascent. And in that video, we counted 21 tiger sharks were on one turtle when I was in the water with it filming. Just play this while I'm chatting, so better than looking at my head. And it makes sense. Dead turtles are a very easy thing for a tiger to do. They've got perfect dentition to rip apart the turtle, get all the way through the shell. You get multiple tigers onto a feeding event. Didn't see any aggression between the tigers. Basically, the small ones always give way to the bigger ones up there. And in all the years I've been up there, I've only seen predation on live turtles a few times. But in just the last few years when we've been working up there, we've been putting cameras on the back of tiger sharks. We've actually seen a lot more predation attempts underwater than what we actually thought was happening. So I think we were missing a lot of the picture of what was happening underneath, and particularly now with the Rain Island restoration program and all that kind of stuff up there, where they've been fixing the island up and saving turtles, that there's not the level of carcasses, and also as the population has dropped, that there were before. So we'd logically be seeing a switching behaviour of the tigers now, having a crack at the live turtles. In terms of tagging up there, it was the same. In the early days, we used to jump in the water and just tail rope them, but the uni got a little concerned about that behaviour. So then I invented this thing years ago called a shark claw, which is like a handcuff that would snap over the base of the tail of the shark. And then as it swam away, it would drag a large fender float on a short rope, and the fender float with the shark dragging that through the water, they stop swimming really quickly. Tigers are one of those classic ones that go immobile when you secure the tail, and they'll just shut down within a minute or so. Ironically, we actually discovered that when I was working as a stuntman on a Hollywood movie with tiger sharks, and then we didn't want to hook them, and so me and my mate, with a tiger that just swam past the duckboard one day, we just leapt on it and tied a rope on it, and that's how we discovered you can immobilize tiger sharks. I don't recommend that now, but yes, that's how we discovered it. With tigers, we do surgically implant the radio transmitter inside, but with larger shark species, we can also fit them with a satellite tag to the dorsal fin. And this technology has got so much better over the last couple of years. The first early days, and we were one of the first doing tigers with satellite tag, actually probably the first for satellite tagging tigers back in the day. They were large, clunky, and not great. But the technology has gotten better, and particularly battery life. But the principle's the same. It's on the dorsal fin. You've got two anodes on it. So when the shark is underwater and there's salt water connecting those, the tag is off. When the dorsal fin comes out of the water, it breaks that circuit and turns the satellite on. And then that transmits its location. So it depends how long the shark is on the surface to how accurate that location is. And also you need the satellite overhead at the same time. And back in the day when we started this, you'd only have satellite coverage about 30% of the day. And now that has increased as well. How long the tag stays on for depends on, and functions for depends on a lot of things. Battery life, but if the shark is a very surface orientated shark, it's turning that tag on more often. So then it'd be wearing the batteries down. So we'd be adjusting things like the duty cycle, how often it would turn on and off, like maybe every fifth time it came up to the surface. Because at the end of the day, if we got a hit every 1 or 2 days, we'd be very happy with it to get a handle on where these animals were going. We were also doing tagging of the turtles during this period as well to see where they left and where they foraged and to see if there was an overlap with that. And essentially what happens is that, during the turtle nesting period, you have obviously the turtles are migrating to this area around Rain Island, and the tiger sharks are migrating around to that area. And then in the off season, they're foraging out further. A lot of the turtles from Rain do head back up to the Torres Straits for feeding grounds, and then some tigers would head up there, others would go south, some would go inshore. But probably the most surprising thing when we first started doing this work is we thought tigers were very much a reef shark. These guys are spending a lot of their time out in the Coral Sea, and exactly what they were doing out there, we're still getting a handle on that. We are seeing some amazing migration patterns. We've got one from the southern GBR that went to Victoria and then over to New Zealand and then up to New Caledonia. So, they can make amazingly large oceanic migrations. Some are wanderers, some are homebodies. We've got some, tigers up and down the reef that, tend to stay in more of a home area, working between a couple of reefs, and then others are more explorers. So maybe just, one of those things with their personalities to, for success, that, don't put all your eggs in one basket and have two different strategies. In terms of the filmmaking and conservation work, whilst at RAIN, we were able to document that one of the reasons we were seeing hardly any hatchlings coming off RAIN, because we were spending a lot of time up there on the filming and shark work, was in fact that the RAIN Island was flooding on the king tides. The government hadn't twigged to this because of their 1 week sampling up there each year that was done during neap tides. So we were able to come back with evidence to show that RAIN was in fact non-functional. And since then, a lot of money has been spent on rebuilding and restructuring RAIN. And at the same time, one of the other cool things is because of our filming technology, drones were only just starting back in the day, and I was one of the first people to pick up a drone and start using it up there. And people were going, "You're nuts! What are you doing this for?" It was literally a GoPro gaffer taped under the earliest things. I was, "Oh no, we're going to do a lot with this." And since then, we've ended up using the drones for 3D mapping the island, where we could do the whole island to 1 centimetre resolution in just an hour. Whereas the old surveyors used to go up for 2 weeks, and when we're doing the restoration stuff, and after 2 weeks of surveying the island, nearly 12 hours a day, they'd have a model that was only a few square meters. Also for counting turtles, the drones have been amazing in our evolution. Okay, so where we're at the moment is BIOPIXEL Foundation. We manage most of the listening array for Queensland. So all these green dots are where those listening stations are for sharks. We've got a team out there. We've been tagging the whole length of Queensland, and all species, tigers, hammers, bulls, pig eyes, whatever we can, we're getting tags out there. So we've got over 1,200 animals tagged at the moment. And this is, it's kind of the golden age at the moment of shark research in what we're getting from this data. And part of our success, particularly with sensitive species like great hammers, is still harking back to the aquarium days of knowing how to handle these animals well to ensure survivability. And when a great hammer comes in for tagging, it's seriously like an F1 car going into the pit stop, how fast things are done, and that animal is released, because it's all about the welfare of the animal, its recovery, minimal stress, to get the best data possible. We have done work for the Queensland government in problem areas where incidences have occurred with humans and sharks, and we had there's a few bites down in the Whitsundays a few years ago. No one had ever done shark research in the Whitsundays, so we all deployed there within a few weeks to try and determine, in fact, what was happening, because no one had any idea, didn't know what species it was there anything unusual happening down there. I was in a place called Sid Harbour, and so we did a number of expeditions down there and tagging a lot of animals, and got some pretty interesting home range data on them. On the left, you can see the tiger sharks, and there wasn't anything unusual with Sundays. In Sid Harbour, we did a lot of bruv, the baited underwater camera drops. We did long lines, we did drum lines. We threw everything in our arsenal at it to catch the sharks. And in fact, if we had done that level of fishing in other places of the reef, we would have caught way more. So it wasn't an unusual shark population. And what we did find was it was all associated with human use of the area. So Sid Harbour, where the problems occurred, you can have up to 180 boats moored a night there. And when we did a long-term analysis of the movement patterns of all the tagged animals, lo and behold, they moved through that area at predominantly lunchtime and early evening, when people are having meals and throwing scraps in the water. The other issue with Sid is its water visibility is atrocious. It's only about 1 metre visibility. And you have a lot of animals, not just sharks, but a lot of fish learn quickly that if there's a noisy shadow above them, if we hang below and I hear a splash, there's some food going in the water. And if I'm not the first to hit it, I'm going to miss out. And unfortunately, the incidences that happened there is when someone had splashed into the water and was pretty well instantly bit. And we have seen this same thing occurring down on the southern end of the Barrier Reef, around Northwest Island, where we've also been doing a lot of work for the government. And again, looking at species around that area and looking at what was causing it. Again, it came back down to human behaviour down there, where people camping on the island. Again, this is the island I used to camp on as a kid, would just take their fish scraps and scraps out just past the reef and dump them there. And that the animals had learned, again, to associate the boats with an easy meal. And so we've been doing a lot of the tagging work down on the southern GBR, which has been helping us build a picture generally for, what's happening with these shark movements for a lot of these different species along the whole Great Barrier Reef. So this is the great hammerhead you can see on the side there. That's pretty amazing track. Probably some of the most surprising stuff for people that are into, shark issues at the moment is with bulls. And you can see these are some of the tracks we've had of bull sharks. So literally, going all New South Wales up to Torres Straits and back again. So what we have shown is that bull sharks are a highly migratory species, making large distance annual migrations. In fact, we've got one individual bull called Katia that we've tracked for almost 4 years now, who will go up the Noosa River in summer, and then in winter goes up to Thursday Island and then back again. They don't pup every year, probably pup every second year, but they're still doing the migratory push each year. And then the males also will go down to their sort of natal areas, and the males will set up a bit of a corridor at the front of the rivers waiting to intercept the females entering or leaving to mate with them. And so one of the things that really became evident about this is, particularly our work at Northwest Island, is we were catching a lot of really big bulls and another species called the pig eye. Now, pig eyes, the only way you can tell the difference between a pig eye and a bull is to look at the anal fin, and bulls like that, pig eyes like that. And even we weren't screwing it up initially. And it was only when we started looking at the genetics and we're like, oh, actually, it's a different animal, that we really had to, fine tune in our identification of these species. And when you're talking to fishers, spearos and stuff like that about the resident bull sharks, they're probably not bulls, they're probably pig eyes, but they just look exactly the same. So it is really a case of, if you're looking at management strategies on sharks, you need to really know what species it is you're looking at, and two, what are its movement patterns through the tracking. So this is where this work has a major importance with how we're dealing with these species, is like knowing the culprit. I'll skip that one. And probably, I'll skip a few things there. Probably leading onto that is shark depredation. It's a massive issue for spearos and fishing. And we have dabbled in this a bit and found that it's not just sharks that are depredating. When I say depredating, that's mean if you're trying to catch a fish, get it up to the boat, you don't get it. The taxman takes it, on the way up. And so we had a student out there with 360 cameras looking at it and found that even mackerel and trevally were depredating catches as well. And it's one of those ironies of having a marine park now where 30% is protected, is we've lived through this shifting baseline period for the last 20, 30 years. Our shark population on the reef was really heavily fished down in the 70s and 80s. And since then, there's been a slow recovery because sharks are slow to mature. But one of the ironies of having a marine park now and all the modern technologies like GPS and sounders is, like, to be honest, the fishing sites everyone knows where they are. They are finite. And unless you're the first person there, it's pretty hard to get a fish up, because the sharks, they're smart, they're lazy. They know if I hang under this noisy shadow, a meal's going to come by really easily. So the data has suggested that this is an issue with these animals knowing. And to be honest, even for filming for us, if we need to film sharks, I'll just take a spear gun down in the water and just fire it. Just the twang, the sharks know that there's an easy meal around. So the data is suggesting that this is happening, but this then becomes a management issue. Then how do you resolve this issue? Do you swap zoning patterns around, all that kind of stuff? But I'll leave that to the managers. I'm a researcher. Some of the coolest stuff we've been doing recently in the last couple of years is we have discovered a whale shark aggregation on the Great Barrier Reef. So this exists up in the far north. On the southern end of Wreck Bay, and not only whale sharks, but whale species, a tropical species called the Omura whale, and also the oceanic manta, not the reef, but the oceanic. So these things are up to 7 meters across, and they're all coming together during the summer months up there. And it started as a tiny project, but it ended up being a massive project for us because all these years of struggling to do research on tigers and bulls. If you pick a friendly shark, people want to fund it. They don't want to fund the ones with the teeth. So we had spotter planes up there to help work in where the area was. And then my main project involvement with it was doing the drone. So then coordinating with the plane to get the drone underneath. So then the drone could be over the whale shark. Whilst we're getting that into position, and sometimes the drone can be 2 kilometers away from the research boat, then the tagging team would go off in the tender. And then they could see the drone hovering over the whale shark, know which way it was swimming, and then the team could then start their work with the tagging of these animals. So the first thing that happens is that someone jumps in the water and takes a photo of the left-hand side because they have unique color patterns, and then duck dive under, sex it, and then the tagger would drift down, and again putting a satellite tag on the shark, but with a spring clamp that's just attached to the dorsal fin. And then if the shark is still hanging around, and to be honest, these are some of the friendliest whale sharks in the world, where they just turn around and want to play with you, then we could take a genetic sample of them. We've had individual sharks stay for hours, where everyone, including the chef and the helicopter pilot, got to jump in the water and have a go with them. The whale sharks up there, anywhere from 3 meters up to 8 meters long. That's the sat tag going on there. And we've had very good success in terms of long-term tracking of these animals, where we've had multi-year data sets for individual animals now for them. So it's been really cool. Predominantly male, but there are some females up there, and the smaller size and some of the larger size ranges are quite interesting as well. These are some of the satellite tracks of these animals over the years. So Ingo Miller has been, he's 2 weeks away from finishing his PhD. He's done an awesome job putting all this together, doing models of, predictive models of where they should be and all that kind of stuff, which actually correlates up really interesting to where we found them. The reason why they're there in the summer months up at Wreck Bay is because of the shape of the bay, is these upwelling events. So megafauna, the migration patterns are strongly driven by food. And so these big animals are coming to that area at that time of year for a feed, essentially, and coming year after year. Very cool stuff. Other cool things is we've just published a paper that our whale sharks are the deepest divers in the world, going to over 2 kilometers down. Why? We don't really know. Possible, shedding of heat as a thermoregulation exercise. The paper just got accepted to publishing, and then last week, and ironically, just a few days ago, we got a new data set of a whale shark that had gone even deeper than the one we just published. One of the issues has been the depth limitations of those tags, so we are putting a deeper tag on them now. That's it gives you an idea of some of the dives that the sharks are doing out the front of the Great Barrier Reef. I must say, having the topographic data that's been put together by Rob Beeman here ex-JCU, he is the master of all seafloor mapping for Queensland. I'll skip through. If you want to track and follow what we're up to, we just had a look at the other day. We've got whale sharks still pinging that were tagged 18 months ago. So there's 8 still active tags. So if you go to our website called biotracker.tv, you can go on and follow the different species we've got tagged out there at the moment: mantas, turtles, whale sharks. We're adding to this all the time. So this is predominantly our satellite data, but we'll be including our acoustic data sets now over the next couple of weeks. So yeah, it will give a bigger and better picture of what these animals are up to. To finish up, if you want to follow what we're doing, follow BIOPIXELations on Insta and Facebook. We're always updating our latest tracks and expeditions and research trips we're doing. And when the new papers come out, we sort of highlight what's coming out and what we're up to. So that was a quick history of our shark research, I suppose. So yeah, there you go. Back over to you, Sarah.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Richard. If I can get you to just stop sharing your slide now, I'll just get people to ask some questions.
For sure.
Thank you. So yeah, we've got about 20 minutes for people to ask questions of Richard. So I'll get everyone to put up their hand on the screen or just in the Zoom reactions if you have a question, and just try to, I guess, limit it to one short question each. Yeah, Emily.
Hi, first of all, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was like incredible hearing this, and I didn't know everything about whale sharks that you were sharing. And I was wondering, like, what's some advice you would give to someone who like aspires to work in shark conservation, and I like really love your photography.
Yeah, we get that a lot. My biggest advice to any of the students going through is this: make sure when you're ready to go out in the workforce is that you've got your dive master, your coxswains, so you've got all those practical skills and have experience with those. So, you know, when you're doing your courses and all that kind of stuff, if you've got those skills, particularly during the breaks, other researchers are always looking for volunteers, but you need to be, you know, a boat driver and a DM to be able to go out on these trips. And that's where by volunteering on those trips and helping is where you meet everyone. Particularly in the fields that you're most interested in, and you know, can show that you're useful in the field, and then hopefully, you know, something happens. But yeah, it's not an easy career to get into, but everyone that I've known that have had those amazing practical skills as well as the science skills have always done well.
Thank you.
Okay, who wants to go next? Anyone? Okay, well, I was going to say, if people still need a bit of time to think about a question, I guess I had a question for you, Richard, if you're happy to answer it. I was just going to ask, I guess, I know that you've been involved in so many different documentaries and films and that kind of thing with sharks, but I just wanted to ask, what was your favorite project to film and why?
Well, it's why, you know, the Attenborough series are always fun to hear his voice over your vision. But one of the coolest ones I did was this. Actually, when we did all that tagging, Osprey Reef for Discovery Channel, that was a 2-hour special for Shark Week back in the day. And the other talent in that was Celine Cousteau, but Mike Degree. Mike was my mentor. You know, as I grew up, that's who I wanted to be. So Mike was the first guy to film the orcas grabbing the seals off the beach for Attenborough. He used to go down submarine, but he was a shark researcher first and then became a cinematographer, but was really keen on shark behaviour. And he did a film in the 80s called Sharks on Their Best Behaviour, which I still think is the best shark doco ever done. And then I've known Mike, and then when we got this commission up, I approached him if he would, you know, be on camera with me and come out and help. And he goes, only if it's conservation and only if there's science output. And we ended up publishing about 5 papers out of that. So to finally work with Mike on a project was awesome. Unfortunately, we lost him a few years ago when James Cameron was doing his Deep Mariana dive. Mike was in the chopper crash that happened with that. So, you know, I've been lucky to have worked with my heroes. You know, Ron Taylor and Ron and Val I've done films with, and yeah, it's cool to see these people growing up and then to actually get to work with them, to be honest.
Yeah, for sure. That makes sense. Thank you. Does anyone have any questions?
Oh, this is easy.
I was going to say, yeah, I mean, your presentation was very clear, but yeah, just anything you guys can think of. Obviously, it's very special to have Richard's time today. Oh, yeah. Steve, would you like to go?
G'day, Richard. Richard, I was listening to your conversations about that sharks are attracted to noise, especially with spearos. Have you ever done any work with the facts of depth sounders, whether sharks can respond and react to depth sounders? Because I know a lot of fishers and spearos, and some of the conversations are the saying is that you got to turn all the electrics off and try and drift on the spots there. And they say one of the big things to turn off is depth sounders. And I just wonder if you got any stories about that.
Yeah, definitely. Like even when you're diving under them, you can just hear them pinging off, and definitely sharks are attuned to those frequencies. So coming in as stealthily as possible onto a fishing site, definitely. Even there's some interesting work that was done over in Cat Island with the oceanic whitetips, which is over in the Bahamas, and what they found in the early days was that the oceanic whitetips could actually differentiate between the boats that would catch a lot of fish and those that didn't, because they'd actually record the acoustic signature of those boats and do these replay experiments. And then it's evolved to the point now where the sharks will only go in if they hear the good boat when it drops out of gear, because then it knows, it's caught a fish. So, yeah, and you talk to the marlin guys and all that kind of stuff. It's just that, when for a marlin boat dropping out of gear, that means something's on, and the sharks are coming in. So they're definitely attuned to having an easy meal and an easy way around it. And it's and that's one of the things too, where people tell me, oh, there's more sharks than ever. We don't really know, on the shark populations, but definitely individuals. You can have the same individuals hanging around a boat going, it's going to be an easy meal or not, and then it's whether the fisherman's counted that shark more than once or twice. But even on the Barrier Reef, when we're down the Whitsunday, some of the fishing groups there, you've got those boats, charter boats that'll go in, drift in, catch a few fish, and then move on because they know it's just going to be easy. And those that then stay, the sharks know the sound of that boat has been an easier way of getting of something. But as I said, ironically, it's a management issue now because of the success of the marine park and the recovery of the shark population. We are just about to start a whole East Coast program looking at the population structure of the bull sharks. Literally, we start in the next couple of weeks to try and get a handle on it. But that's only at this point in time. We'll have to repeat it again to see if it's increased or not. But bulls are potentially one of those animals that has benefited from particularly development on the coast with canals and all that kind of stuff, giving more habitat for juveniles. And the other thing, Nico Lubitz, who did his PhD with this, he had an amazing paper that went in Nature that has shown that bull sharks now are going for longer further south, down in New South Wales. And that's the thing with climate change, and the model is that we'll have bulls further south for longer. So yes, we are playing catch up. And if a shark scientist tells you they know what's happening, they're lying. We really have no idea. We're playing catch up so much.
Awesome, thank you. Lauren.
I just have a quick question. With the sheer amount of sharks that you've caught and tagged, I know different species have generalistic different personalities and how they act once they're close to the boat, but have you ever found like just specific ones tend to have their own, anomalies and that kind of thing?
Oh, for sure. Particularly tigers, when I was spending a lot of time in the water with them up at Rain, knowing individual tigers. There was one, Emily, had a big spot on the side, and if she was eating a turtle, I could drift into her so close that I could put my hand out and push it back off the side of her head, and she just wouldn't care. And others just different personalities, that wouldn't want you near the turtle. So, there's definitely a bell curve in behaviour with sharks. Some that are more cautious, others are more extreme. And one of the interesting stories of spending a lot of time with Ron and Val Taylor is when they first did Jaws, and then there was that explosion in shark fishing in Australia in the 70s and 80s, post Jaws. Everyone wanted to catch a shark. Is that Ron said back in the early days, you put the cage in, and the whites were trying to eat the cage to get to you. Well, they would have been the first sharks taken out by fishing. And so there's been a selective pressure through fishing activities on the sharks' behaviour trends that, the more cautious ones weren't getting caught. So, there has been a shift with that. And then as populations are coming back up, we are seeing this range of behaviours again, whether it's how far they swim, the migrations, all that kind of stuff. Is that, and it's not just sharks. You look at humpbacks. There was a humpback that gave birth in Tassie last year. It was like, I'm not going all that way up the coast. And then when we had others going into the river in the Northern Territory. So as the populations are larger, you are seeing a bigger range of behaviours in these animals.
Thank you. That's cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Anyone else like to ask a question? Doing again. Fair enough. I think it was, yeah. I mean, I know you presented very well. I guess I have one last question as well. If anyone needs a little bit more time to think of a question. I guess, I mean, it's obviously hard to pick favorites, but would you say you have a specific favorite shark species that you've worked with?
Oh, tigers, definitely. Yeah, when I started on tigers, no one was doing tigers. It was always the poor cousin to the great white. They were regarded as being the garbage collectors of the sea. Well, they're not. Out of all the shark species, they probably have the highest plasticity in terms of feeding range. And for each of those things they feed on, they have different behaviours to achieve that. Even how they rush birds on the surface. Actually, Mike, who I was talking about earlier, he was the guy who did that whole first work up in the Hawaiian chains on tigers hitting the fledgling albatross. And unfortunately, just before he passed, we were planning on this massive doco about tiger shark behaviours around the world, and that was one of them. And that was only 14 individual sharks who'd come in and do that behaviour, and it would take them a week to relearn how to do that approach on the surface. And then look at the tigers hitting the dead turtles, but the images how tigers have to approach a live turtle to be successful, and if they realise the turtle has seen them, they just break off. And this is some amazing behaviour stuff we're getting now by putting cameras on the back of the tiger sharks. And for that kind of work, we have to get the shark in, don't catch it, get it close enough that you can put the camera on it, and then cease all feeding, baiting activities to let the shark go off and return to its natural behaviour as soon as possible. So, they are amazing animals. And the babies are so cute.
Awesome, thank you. Emily, did you have another question?
Yes, I was just wondering where we could find all of your research and all of their documentaries. Is it on the Instagram?
It is scattered everywhere, to be honest. We've got, I was just looking at the list now, on Netflix, we've got a few shows that I've worked on, Life on Our Planet and National Parks. Disney is, if you've got Disney streaming, we've got our Supersized Shark doco, which is featuring Adam and one of our collaborators, Charlie Hooverneers and Lauren Mayer from Flinders Island, where we were over tagging the mega big tigers in Norfolk Island. That's cool. And Ultimate Animal Journeys on Disney. That's one of the big ones we did recently, which is really got a lot of that cool tiger behaviour and turtles. What else we got? On Apple, we've got Tiny Worlds. You're right. I should put something on Instagram so people can find where all our stuff is. But yeah, all the streaming channels, there's something of ours on everything, really.
And I was going to say, with your research, would people be able to search you up on ResearchGate or something like that to find a lot of things?
Yes, my name in and the word shark, or Adam Barnett is my research partner. He's much more publications than me. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, well, I guess thank you so much again for your presentation today. It was so great to hear from you and I guess your wide range of experience. And thank you everyone as well for joining us this morning and for all your contributions and questions. Yeah, thank you so much. And I appreciate everyone being here.